Okay, this section is important. Even though it will be a short one, you will find using burpsuit a lot. But before we get to setting it up, let's first briefly discuss what burpsuit is. burpsuit is a platform specifically designed for testing of web applications. It has many tools that make testing process much easier, and it's also used as a proxy. Not a proxy in a sense that it will hide your IP address, but proxy in a sense that it will allow us to inspect all the packets and HTTP requests and responses that we do while visiting a certain page. It will allow us to intercept different requests, modify them, and then forward them to the web page or to drop them if we choose to. burpsuit is considered #1 tool for bug bounty for many penetration testers. In this section, we're going to set it up and check out some basic options that it has, and the rest of it we will practice throughout the course. Let's first start off by configuring it as a proxy for our Firefox. So to do that, the first thing that we want to do is we want to open terminal and start our burpsuit, and we can do that by typing burpsuit inside of our terminal. Press enter, and in just a few seconds we will get the opening menu for this tool. And unlike many other tools that we used before, this tool has a graphic user interface, so it will be much easier to use and to navigate through. If you get this Community Edition warning, you can click here on OK, and in a few seconds we will get to open burpsuit. Okay, here is the opening window. You can leave this checked or unchecked, whatever you like, and click on I accept. Once this window opens up, and you might also get this window opened up, which says an update is available, you can update it now, but if you get it, just click on close for now, and here select temporary project, click on next, and use burp defaults and click on start burp. This will open our project in just a few seconds, and then we will be fully able to use burpsuit. Now, one more thing to mention is that burpsuit has a community edition and professional edition. A community edition is free, while professional edition is paid, and it does allow us some other additional options that we can use with this tool. However, for this course we will be using the free community edition. Once it opens up, you will get a window that looks something like this. Let me enlarge it, and I know that there are many things happening right now, but don't worry, all of this is simple. First thing that we want to do in order to configure it with our Firefox as a proxy, we want to navigate right here on proxy, make sure that this intercept is off by clicking on it. It will simply just say intercept is now off. Then navigate to the options and make sure that you have in this small window 127.0.0.1 on port 8080, and make sure that you also have it checked. If you don't have this option right here, just click on add and you can add it right here. Since I already have it, I'm not going to add anything, I'm just going to leave it as it is. And the next step that we want to do is start our Firefox. Once you start our Firefox, we want to navigate to Firefox settings. You can do that by going on these 3 lines, scroll a little bit down onto the preferences, click on that. And under the general settings, we want to scroll all the way down until we get to network settings right here. In the network settings, click on the settings button, and it will open the first setting, which is proxy configuration, which should by default be set to no proxy. We want to change it right now to manual proxy configuration, and in the manual proxy configuration under the HTTP proxy tab, we want to select 127.0.0.1 as an IP address on port 8080, the same settings that we have inside of our burpsuit under the options tab. Once you set it right here, check this option as well that says also use this proxy for FTP and HTTPS, and it will autofill these 2 fields with the same settings. Once you have it looking like this, click on OK. And if you try to visit any HTTP page right now, for example, I will go to this page. Just make sure that it is an HTTP page and not an HTTPS. And if it is an HTTP, it will successfully load the page. And you will notice that it also does do it a little bit slower because right now all of our connection is going through our Burp Suite, through our proxy. As we can see, here is the link right here. But if you tried to, for example, visit any HTTPS page, let's go to facebook.com, for example, it will give you this error: did not connect, potential security issue. Now, in order to fix this, we must download the Burp certificate and add it to our Firefox certificates. How can we do that? Open another tab, navigate to http://burp. Visit that link and it will open a window like this. On this window we have this button right here that says CA certificate. Click on that and save file. Click on OK and it will download this file for us, which will be in our downloads directory. After we do that, we want to go back to our Firefox settings and we want to navigate to Privacy and Security tab. Once again, we want to scroll all the way down until we get to the option that says Certificates right here. Then click on View Certificates, and here we want to import the file that we just downloaded. How can we do that? Well, simply just click on Import, navigate to the Downloads directory and select the file that we just downloaded and click on it. Once it opens this window, check both of these options that says trust this certificate to identify websites and trust this certificate to identify email users. Check both of them and click on OK. Then you can click on OK right here as well. And now we should be able to fully use our Firefox and we have completed the Burp Suite setup. Let's double check again on Facebook whether we can visit HTTPS page. And right now it loads it without any error. And we can also see if we go to the Target tab in our Burp Suite, we can see that we successfully loaded HTTPS facebook.com. And that is pretty much it. If you can load both HTTP and HTTPS pages after configuring Burp Suite, then you are good to go. In the next couple of videos, we're going to check out some stuff that Burp Suite allows us to do. Welcome back. We performed the setup of our Burp Suite tool. Now, let's see what we can do with it. First thing that you will notice after the setup is that if you have Burp Suite off, you will not be able to visit any website at all. Let me show you what I mean. For example, currently I don't have anything open, and if I go to my Firefox and try to visit a page like facebook.com, we get this error. The proxy server is refusing connections, and this is due to our Burp Suite not being started at this very moment. Now, you can always remove Burp Suite as proxy if you'd like by doing the same steps of going to proxy settings right here. Let me scroll all the way down to the network settings, and under the proxy settings, all you want to do to remove the Burp Suite and make your Firefox run as usual is to select no proxy right here. However, right now we do want to have it as a proxy. So let's just start our Burp Suite by going to our terminal and typing Burp Suite. Let's wait for a couple of seconds for it to start up. And while it's starting, let's also start our OWASP BWA virtual machine. Let's click on Temporary Project, use Burp Defaults, and start Burp Suite. Okay, so this is our Burp Suite window. We already saw it from the previous video. And in this video, let's start off by checking that intercept option that we saw in the last video. So by default, once you open Burp Suite, intercept, which we can find under the proxy tab, will automatically be on, as we can see right here. And this will always be navigated under the proxy tab and under the intercept tab. But what does this intercept option even mean? Well, it's simple. it will intercept every single HTTP request that we try to send, and it will block it right here. It won't forward it or drop it, it will ask us what we want to do with it instead. Let me show you how it looks like. For example, once we have intercept off, if we turn it off, we can normally visit a page like facebook.com. As you can see, it will load everything normally. There will be no problems. It might work a little bit slower because we're going through Burp Suite, but nonetheless, it will load the page. But if we try to reload the page with intercept being on, let's turn it on, and let's click on this reload button. We intercept an HTTP request. And this is the request that we're trying to send. Here it is. We are performing a GET request on host facebook.com. This request didn't reach its destination yet, and we can confirm that by going to Firefox, and as we can see, our page is not loading. Instead, it seems as if it's still reloading, as we can see right here on our tab. That is because Burp Suite is waiting for us to choose what we want to do with this request. And we do have some options right here. We can either forward the request, or we can drop it and not send it at all. But we also have this action button right here that gives us multiple options as to what we can do with this request, such as send to sequencer, send to intruder, send to repeater, and these options are something that we will talk about in the next video, but for now, let's see what happens once we forward this request. Let's press forward. Another request comes in. Why? Well, usually when you visit a website, you don't just perform one single request. It is multiple requests to multiple pages that, once they are sent, we get to load this Facebook page. In this case, our Facebook page does appear to be loaded. As we can see right here, it's no longer loading. But we must also forward all of the incoming requests as well. So let's do that real fast. Let's forward every single request that we get. And that should be about it. There were a lot of them, but now we can see no requests are being sent anymore. Now, you might have a couple of them coming every couple of seconds right here. As we can see, here's one that came a couple of seconds late. And this will depend on which page you're trying to load. So a couple of requests might come every couple of seconds. As we can see, even though we forwarded this one, another one might come in just a couple of seconds, and here it is. Now, another thing that we can do, for example, is to modify our request. Let's turn our intercept off for a second. Let's go to our Firefox and let's first check what is the IP address of our OWASP machine. It is 192.168.1.5 in my case. Let me visit it. And let's, for example, go right here to the DVWA. And if we turn our intercept on, and for example, we try to submit test username and test password, we intercept the request right here. We can see we are trying to perform a post request on this page because we are actually sending some data inside of a form, which in this case is username and password. And here we can see test and test to be the username and the password. Now, if we want, we can change this data. We can, for example, type test123 and we can forward our packet. Let's forward this one as well and this one. And if I go right here, it will tell us login failed. So that is incorrect password and also incorrect username. Now let me turn intercept off, and just so I can show you that changing of certain things in an HTTP request works, let me tell you that the username and password for this DVWA page is admin and admin. So once you type admin and admin, click on login, you will successfully log into this page. But let's try to turn on intercept, write incorrect username and incorrect password, which is once again test and test. And let's try to modify it right here to the correct username and correct password, just so we can see whether we managed to log in. So admin, admin, we forward the request, and let's forward other requests as well. And now you can see that we managed to log into this page. Awesome. This is the power of intercepting the requests. Now that we explored this option, in the next video we're going to take a look at some other possibilities with Burpsuit. See you there. Okay, we are aware of the intercept option inside of Burpsuit. But we did also notice that there are other things here such as intruder, repeater, and others. What are those options? Well, they all have their own purpose. Let's first start by checking out this target tab right here. So in this target tab will be all the websites that we visited while having Burpsuit as proxy in the current session. They will be listed in this left window right here. Let's give it a try. For example, if I go and visit tesla.com, let's first of all make sure that intercept is turned off so we don't get stuck on a certain request. Turn it off. Go back to the target tab. And here are all the links that we visited once we tried to visit tesla.com. In order for us to load tesla.com page, we had to send request to all of these domains right here. And somewhere in here we should also see tesla.com. Let me check it out. Here it is. It's last in my case. And once you select it, or once you select any of these links or domains, in the window to the right, we will see all of the HTTP requests that we performed with that website. Let's, for example, take a look at this first request. So this is the first request that we performed. It's us trying to get www.tesla.com. And here are the HTTP headers of our HTTP GET request for this page. If we wanted to check out the HTTP response, we can take a look at this right window right here. So this is the response to our HTTP request. We can scroll all the way down and we will be able to see the HTML code of tesla.com page, which is this one right here. We can print it out like this. We can also take a look at the raw headers right here, as well as the HTML code. And we can also press the render option, and this will render the HTML code of that page, and we should be able to see the page right here in just a couple of seconds. And here it is. Now it doesn't look quite that good as it does look right here, but nonetheless it tried to render it. Okay, now let's check out these actions right here, but let's check it out on our DVWA page. So let's visit our OWASP BWA machine. Let's navigate once again to this DVWA page. And once it loads, let us first log out just in case, because we did log in last time we used this application. And if we go to our targets tab, now we should see somewhere our OWASP virtual machine. And in my case, here it is. You should see just the IP address of your OWASP machine. And you can see once we have the render tab, it does render out the page for us. But let's go back to the pretty response, which will give us the HTTP response headers as well as the HTML code. Now let's try to find the request where we visit DVWA. And let's see it right here. I do believe it's this one. Let us check out. And if you don't want to scroll to all of these requests, what you can do is you can just turn on your intercept and specify once again incorrect username and password. And once it intercepts this request, you can click on action and let's go with repeater. Let's send to repeater. As soon as you click on that, you will see this repeater tab light up. It will become orange. So for now, we can turn off intercept, we can navigate to the repeater, and there we should be able to see our request. Here it is. Now, what you can do with the repeater is you can send a certain request as many times as you want. For example, I can try to send this request, and in the right window, we will get the response. Now, you might notice something weird right here. We're not getting the HTML code down here. So what does this mean? Well, if we take a look at this response a little bit better, we're going to see that we didn't get the code of 200, which means that the page loaded successfully. We got the code of 302. And once this happens, this usually means that you're about to get redirected to a certain page. In that case, we can click on this button, Follow Redirection, and it will redirect us to the page. As we can see, now we have the HTML code, and since we submitted the username and password of test, we get the login failed message, which is the same message that we have right here. We specified incorrect username and password, so we can also do the same thing that we did with intercept. We can also do it in repeater. We can change the incorrect username and password to the correct username and password. For example, let's go to the intercept turned on. Let's forward these packets. Or let me just do it like this. I'm going to type test and then test, turn on the intercept, and click on login. Now, let me go and find this specific request for the DVWA page, and here it is. Now, let's send it once again to the repeater. Turn off the intercept, go to the repeater, and here we will have once again this request. Now, you can change anything that you want in this request. For example, we can see the user agent tab right here that says Mozilla 5.0 and says the Linux version. It pretty much gives the information about us. And if you wanted to hide that information to the DVWA page and to our OWASP virtual machine, you can type, for example, that user agent is iPhone 7, for example, and leave it just like this, and this will get sent to the page. We can also change the correct details. Correct usernames and passwords to admin and admin, and then we can send this request. Remember that it will get redirected, so we must follow the redirection, and now we shouldn't get that login failed error. Instead, we should successfully log in to the page, and if we go to render, it should render out a logged in page. As we can see right here, down here it says username is admin, so we successfully logged in, as it says right here as well. You will also notice that the next request that we're about to send has the user agent of iPhone 7. So that is also something that we managed to change. How cool is that? Okay, this is repeater. It is similar option as to intercept, just here it saves our HTTP request. It allows us to modify it as we like and resend it as many times as we want. Then we can easily take a look at the response and render its HTML code right here. In the next video, we will be checking out the intruder option, which is also really useful. See you in the next lecture. Alright, let us take a look at another option that Burpsuit gives us, which is intruder. Now, you can consider intruder as something made for brute force attacks. The definition behind it is that it allows us to change anything in the HTTP request and forward it, but it also allows us to change certain parts of HTTP requests by reading stuff from a list. Now, it might sound confusing, but let me show you what I mean. Make sure that intercept is turned off, make sure that you have the OWASP virtual machine started, and let's visit our DVWA login page. It will lead us to this page, and we should be able to find it under the target tab and right here. So here it is. As we can see, this is the GET request that searched for /dvwa/login.php, which is the exact link right here. Now, we can send this request straight from here to the intruder by right-clicking on it and clicking Send to Intruder. And as usual, you will see this intruder tab light up. It will become orange. Go to it, and this is pretty much all we get. Now, it might seem nothing at the beginning, but we do have 4 different tabs for this request. So once we switch to the Positions tab, here we can see our HTTP request. Now, you will see some of the things here already light up, and these are the things that we do want to change because they might be important for us, which in this case is correct since these are cookie values, and in some attacks we might want to change the cookie value. But let's go with a different HTTP request. Let's go with an HTTP request where we try to log in. So let's go test and test, which is incorrect login. We will get the login failed error, and now let's try to find that request right here. It will be a post request, so you can already filter it out since all of these other requests are GET request, and here is the only post request. And down here we can see that it does contain our username and password. So we can either go here on actions and send it to intruder, or we can just right click here and send it to intruder. And once we visit the intruder, we will have another tab opened up, and if we go to the positions, here is our HTTP login request. Now you will see that these options as well are now printed in green, because as I mentioned, burpsuite recognizes them as something that could be important for us. Now, what I usually like to do is I like to clear out all of these other options, and this will remove any green print that burpsuite gives by default. Now we have something called payload positions, and as you can see, there is this attack type option that we can choose from. If we click on this arrow, we will get 4 different attack types. Now, to read more about these attack types, what I advise you to do is click on this question mark, and this question mark will open up a page that gives you all the detailed information about these attack types as well as what you can do with the intruder. If we scroll all the way down, it also gives you the explanation for add, clear and auto button, which are the buttons right here on the right side. And under the attack type, we can read about each and every attack type that we want. For example, the sniper attack type uses only a single set of payloads. It targets each payload position in turn and places each payload into that position in turn. Now, in other words, this simply means that with sniper attack type, we can only select one word right here that we want to change. For example, let's say that we want to brute force this account, but we do know username and we don't know password. We would select the password field and we will use the sniper attack in order to brute force the password field. You have some other options that you can use. Battering ram, this uses a single set of payloads. Now, you can read about all of these if you like. For example, cluster bomb is an option that you would use if you want to brute force both username and password, since as it says right here, this uses multiple payload sets, which means you can select, for example, password and username. And then you can brute force both of them at the same time. Now, let me show you what I mean. For example, let's say that we do know the username, which is admin, but we don't know the password, and we just set it to be test. What we would want to do in order to get into this account is we would want to select this test and click on add. And you will see that it will become green. Once we do that, we told the burpsuite that we're going to try to brute force this word right here. Then we can go to payloads, and under the payloads, in this window right here, we want to load our list. Now you can either add list by clicking on this load button and then navigating through your file system and trying to find a txt list that you want to use. Or you can add some random words right here, for example, test123, test1234, 12345, let's say root, and let's also add the correct password, just so we can show you that it does work. And let's go password and password 123. Now, let's say that this is our list that we want to use. Once we select it right here, we can click on this start attack. It will give us this error, which we want to click on OK, and it will start our attack. And what Intruder will do is it will send an HTTP request with changed password, and it will change password with these items that we specified in our list. It will go for each password and it will perform the request, and we can see that we got status 302, which, if you remember, it does redirect us after we send this request. But what you can do is you can, for example, select the incorrect password. Now in this case we do know what incorrect and what correct password is, so we can just select the incorrect one, and we can right click on it and click on request in browser, or we can also choose show response in browser. If we click on that, it will give us a link that we want to copy. We can copy that link, go right here and paste it. We get login failed printed a couple of times, and we do get correct login right here. Now this is a bug because we only requested one password, but it does give us that one of these 8 passwords from our list did work and we did manage to log in. Since we already know which one it is, let's go to this option, select the correct password, which is admin, and show response in browser, copy the link. We can close this for now and we can go to that link. And here it is. Once we selected the HTTP request where the password was admin, now it logs us in because that was the correct password. How awesome is that? So we performed a small brute force attack right here. Now, this is not that practical, and we're going to talk about that more once we get to the brute forcing part of the course. For now on, we just took a look at a very simple brute force attack. Now, we're going to take a look at how we can deal with the problem once it redirects, because we don't really want to go and visit every single request for every single password just to see whether we managed to log in or no. We want another way that we can check out which password is correct much faster, right? Well, we will talk about that in the brute force part of the course. For now on, we checked out the option called intruder, and there are many other options that burpsuit allows us to use. However, we're going to check most of them out throughout the course. We just covered the basics of burpsuit right now so we can get familiar with it. And if there is something that you didn't quite get or didn't quite understand, don't worry, we will practice it a lot throughout the course. For now on, it's just important that you do know how to navigate through burpsuit, you do know what target tab is, you do know what proxy tab is, you do know how to intercept certain requests and how to remove the intercept. All of that is important. However, more advanced stuff we're going to cover throughout the course. Now we are fully ready, and in the next lecture, we're going to start off with our first vulnerability, which will be HTML injection. See you there. Finally, our first vulnerability, HTML injection. Now, I already showed you an example of this bug in one of the first videos of the course, and it's very easy to perform. That's why we're starting with it right now. This is first bug that we are going to cover. For all the bugs that we will cover in this course, we will be asking 3 main questions. What is it? How can we do it? And how do we fix it? These are important questions for us, especially how we can discover a certain bug. Now, luckily HTML injection is not one of those critical vulnerabilities, however it is considered a bug. And we are going to start off by explaining what exactly is it. So, what is it? To describe it in one sentence, we can say HTML injection is injecting HTML code into the website page. Simple as that. How exactly does it work? Well, here's an example. Let's say we have a very simple web page that performs only one task. It asks the client to enter their name inside of a user input field. Once the person enters their name, for example, let's say that they entered a name Tom, the application then outputs hello Tom. So we notice that this application reflects what we input to the page. We type something in, and the application processes that input and reflects it back in a sentence hello Tom. So code could look something like this. We have form, where we submit our name, and after the form it will output hello and then whatever we wrote inside of our input field. In our code example, our name is reflected here. But the key part of our code is Tom. That is what we have control of. So then comes the question, what would happen if instead of a regular name, we submit an HTML code? In this case, a simple open header of size 1 tags and test written between header tags would be enough. What would happen to the HTML code on the web page if we injected this? what would it reflect then? Well, here is where we decide if the page is vulnerable to HTML injection or not. Our HTML code injected in the page would look something like this, once added to this code example. But the question is, how will the website process it? Is it going to process it as a regular string, or will it process it as an HTML code? If the website processes it as an HTML code and it outputs test written in header size 1, then we can conclude that the web page is vulnerable to HTML injection and that user input field isn't filtered well enough to block HTML tags and HTML code. Okay, this was an example in theory, but right now let's see how that would look like in practice. Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to take a look at our first example of HTML injection, but we're also going to take a look at how we can set up and deploy vulnerable virtual machines on our TryHackMe platform. So first thing to make sure is that you have burpsuit turned on, even though we won't need it for this lecture, but it's good practice to get used to using it and having it as a proxy every time you perform some website penetration testing. Then go and log in to your TryHackMe account. And now we want to see how we can actually deploy their virtual machines and test them. So for this course, we're going to be using OWASP 10 Vulnerabilities Lab, which is free to use on this platform. It is located if you go on Learn, then you navigate to Web Hacking Fundamentals. And under the Web Hacking Fundamentals, if we scroll a little bit down, we're going to see OWASP Top 10, which is the room that hosts top 10 most critical website vulnerabilities. And it's also free to use. So let's click on it. This will be the room that we're going to be doing. And in this specific room, we don't really have an HTML injection. However, we can use a different task that we have right here to demonstrate HTML injection. And that different task is going to be this one, task number 5, Command Injection Practical. Just so you don't get confused, we are not yet learning command injection. We're going to be focusing on command injection later in the course. For now, we want to do HTML injection. And we can also do it on this lab right here. You don't need to read any of this for now. We're going to leave that for later. For now, we're only interested into starting this machine. But there is one problem with this. Once we start the machine, it will be deployed in their own network. So we must VPN to their network in order to be able to access this machine. How can we do that? Well, it's rather simple. We can do that with the help of OpenVPN that we have inside of our Kali Linux. And they have a good guide on how we can do that. So navigate to this icon right here, then navigate to Access. And here we have the page where we can download our configuration file that we will use to access their VPN server. Here I have my VPN server selected, which is currently this one, and if I click on download my configuration file, it will open this file, which will have my username as well as .ovpn. If we save the file, it will be located in our downloads directory, and all we have to do afterwards is open a terminal, navigate to your downloads directory. If I type ls, here will be the file that I just downloaded, and in order to VPN into their network, we type sudo openvpn and then the file name, which in my case is this one. If I press enter, I enter my password. In just a few seconds, we will have everything set up. And now if we open a third terminal and we type ifconfig, you will see this third interface right here, where you will get the IP address from the VPN, which in my case is this one. And this is the IP address that we will use to communicate with the vulnerable virtual machines that we're going to deploy on their network. So now that we did that, we can refresh this, and hopefully if we did everything correctly, this should update our information. We're currently connected to their VPN server, and this is our Kali Linux IP address. Okay, now let's go back to the lab. Now that we did all of this, let's navigate again to Web Hacking Fundamentals. Let's go to OWASP Top 10. And as already mentioned before, to demonstrate HTML injection, we're going to start this machine under task 5. Let's start it by clicking on this start button. And it will say starting your machine, please wait. In a few seconds, we're going to see this tab right here. It will say that the machine expires in 59 minutes, so that is how long we have to solve our task. Even though we're not really doing the command injection task, but this is how long the machine will stay up. And the IP address of the machine will be shown in 39 seconds. So all we have to do for now is to wait for this timer to go to 0 in order to be able to see the IP address of our target machine. And here it is. I got my IP address of my virtual machine. Now it gives you this option to copy it. And the first thing that I always like to do with this is I like to try to ping that IP address, because sometimes it might take a couple of minutes for you to be able to communicate with this machine. You won't be able to communicate with it straight away, so pinging or visiting the HTTP web page won't really work. As we can see right here, I'm still not able to ping it. So let's wait for a couple more seconds, and hopefully in a minute or two we should be able to visit the web page of this IP address, and also we should be able to ping it. Okay, a few minutes went by, and let's try it again. If I ping the IP address, now we have established connection and we can communicate with this machine. Awesome. Let's Control-C this, and the next thing that we want to do is visit the web page on this machine. Now, for the command injection part, if we go to the task that we have, we would be visiting this link right here. But we're not really interested in performing command injection right now. We will do that later. For now, we want to perform HTML injection. So what I want you to do is I want you to copy the IP address of your machine and add / at the end. Press enter, and it should load this page that says directory search. It's a very simple web page. As we can see, we do have a user input right here. We can type something in, and then we have a button to submit. So let's type, for example, test. Click on submit, and we get an error. User test was not found on the system. Now, what does this tell us? If we go back to our theory video of HTML injection, we remember that if our input that we specified reflects somewhere on the web page, we can try and test for HTML injection, and our test was reflected here. So what would happen if we, for example, typed HTML code? Let's give it a try. Let me just zoom this in so we can see everything better. And I'm going to type h1 and then close header tags and then capital test and then close header tags again. So we have open header tags for the h1 header size. We have test and close h1 tags. Let's submit this, and here it is. We get test printed in header of size 1. So that means this is vulnerable to HTML injection. And just in case you're not sure, we can do something like this, for example, h1, and then we can also underline to see whether it will process the underlined tags of HTML code, and if it will underline our test string. Don't forget to close both underline tag and header 1 tag, and if we submit, well, here it is. We get our test string underlined. This means this web page is vulnerable to HTML injection. And this is the most simple example that we can have. Nonetheless, we're going to take a look at some other examples and some other possibilities with HTML injection in the next videos, but for now on, we'll learn how we can deploy our virtual machines inside of our TryHackMe account, and we also learned how we can connect to its VPN. Remember that you will have to do this every time you start TryHackMe. But once you downloaded this file that we have right here, you can always use the same file. Just also make sure that you use the same VPN server. You just run this command every time you want to use TryHackMe, and it will connect to their VPN, which will allow you to access their machines whenever you start them. Okay, awesome. Now that we got that out of the way, let's see an example of HTML injection on our OWASP BWA virtual machine. See you in the next video. Welcome back. let's see a different example of finding HTML injection vulnerability. For this, we're going to need our OWASP virtual machine, so make sure that it is started. Make sure that you have burp suite started right here and that intercept is turned off. Now what we want to do is we want to navigate to the IP address of our OWASP virtual machine. Then we want to navigate to OWASP mutilday 2. And you will notice that right here, if we go to OWASP 2013 and A1 injection, we will have multiple examples of HTML injection, or should I say multiple practice examples of it. Let's go to, for example, this one. Let's go to HTML injection and then browser info. If I click on that, it will open a page that it should be vulnerable to HTML injection, right? But compared to the last example that we saw, here we don't really see any user input that we can use to inject code. We can't enter our HTML code anywhere on this page. So what are we going to do? Well, let's take a look at the page a little bit closer. If we take a look at all of the information that we have right here, we're going to notice something quite familiar for us, which is this user agent string. It appears to be our user agent, or us. Now, if we remember, in the HTTP headers, there is a user agent header that has this information for us. So could it be that perhaps the user agent header is getting reflected on this page? I mean, we can give it a try. Let's see what happens once we reload this page while intercept is turned on. So let's go to our burp suite, turn on the intercept, and let's reload this page. So straight away we get this HTTP request, and this is the same request for this page since we tried to reload it. Now let's compare this information right here, which is the user agent string, with the user agent string that we got in our HTTP headers. So here it is. As we can see, it's pretty much the same thing. So even though we don't have a user input field on our web page, could we possibly try to inject HTML code in the user agent field? Well, let's give it a try. If I delete the current user agent and I type h1 tags and then test, and then I close h1 tags, and let's also, for the purposes of this tutorial, add the underline tags just so we can see whether it will also underline it. So if we open the tags, we must also close them. And once we inject this, hopefully, if it gets reflected on this page, we're going to see test written in header size 1 and also underlined. Let's give it a try. Let's forward this packet and turn off the intercept. Go back to the page, and here it is. We get test reflected as an HTML code. How cool is that? We didn't use any user input field on the page, but we still managed to inject HTML code through HTTP headers. Awesome. This is just another example of HTML injection, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at even more interesting example and more useful example of HTML injection. See you in the next video. Welcome back. Let's take a look at a different usage of HTML injection and what else can we do with it once we find it out. Well, let's take a look at a different example this time. So in the last video, we injected our HTML code in the user agent HTTP header field. And that is when we found out that it's possible to inject HTML code without having any user input field. We just intercept the request in our burp suite and we injected the HTML code in our user agent field. Now let's take a look at another example. So navigate once again to OWASP mutilday 2. Let's go to the HTML injection and let's try this one. HTML injection via cookie injection. That is the one that we haven't tried yet. So let's go on capture data page and let's take a look at this page. So once again, we don't really have any user input field that we can type our HTML code in. But we do get this printed out. And if we take a look at a little bit closer to here, we will have this data or this string written on this page. Now, what does this look like? Well, it looks like a cookie value. As we can see, PHP session ID, and then we get the value right here. So could it be that our cookie value reflects on this page? Well, we already know how we can check that. We can simply just intercept the request inside of the burp suite. So let's reload the page, and here we get the request. Here is the PHP session ID. And let's compare these values right here. And that's pretty much it. This is getting reflected on this page. So we already know how we will go about doing this. We would just inject our HTML code, we would reflect the HTML code on the page, and we would conclude that the page is vulnerable. But let's try to inject something else than just HTML headers. Let's try to redirect this page to google.com with the help of HTML code. So how we can do that? Well, we can write this code. Let me just open Nano real quick. HTML redirect code.txt. Code.txt. And we're going to write this code. So open tags meta http-equiv equals open double quotes refresh close double quotes. Then let's add space content equals 5. And we're going to explain this in just a second. It's rather simple. Then semicolon, and then URL equals https://www.google.com. Close double quotes and close the HTML tags. So what are we doing right here? Well, first of all, let me just delete these two dots. We don't need two of them. One is just enough. And what this code does is it refreshes the page where we inject this code and redirects it to google.com. And this content equals 5 is simply just the amount of seconds that it's going to wait before it redirects the page. If we write 5, it will wait for 5 seconds and then it will redirect the page. If we set right here 1 or 0, it will redirect it straight away. So let's give it a try. Instead of injecting HTML header size 1, like we did in the previous video, let's try to inject this under the cookie value inside of our HTTP request. And here it is. Okay, let's forward this. And let's turn off the intercept. Navigate right here, and in 5 seconds, this page should get redirected to google.com. Here it is. We didn't type anything, it redirected automatically due to our code being processed as an HTML. Now, if you want to, you can do this. Let me just go back via cookie injection, capture data. Let's intercept the request and let's refresh the page. You can also do this straight away. You don't need to wait for 5 seconds in order to redirect the page. All you have to do is navigate to the content and change it to 0. Then forward the request or turn off the intercept, go back, and it will get redirected straight away. How cool is that? Okay, so this was another tag that we could have done with HTML injection. We can simply just redirect the page. And we also saw another way that we can perform HTML injection, which is through the cookie value. We changed the cookie value with the HTML code and it got executed because it got reflected on our page. Awesome. So in the next video, we're going to take a look at another example of HTML injection, and then in a video or two, we're about to move on to the next, more serious and dangerous vulnerability. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to take a look at 2 more examples of HTML injection. And with this, we're going to finish off with this vulnerability. Now, before we start off with these examples, it's important to notice that this is not the most critical vulnerability that we can find on a page, but we did start with it just because it's simple to perform. The effect that it can have is, well, with HTML injection, you can pretty much change anything on the page. You can change the HTML code, you can make it redirect to a different page that we saw an example in the previous video. So what you can, for example, do is you can create a fake page that looks exactly like the page that you're testing. You can add a form, perhaps a login form there, and then you can redirect the real page to the fake page that looks exactly the same, and the user that gets redirected won't really notice anything. They might type their information, such as usernames and passwords, on the fake page, and you would be able to get all of that. And that is the power of HTML injection, because a regular user won't really see the difference between a real page and a fake page. Nonetheless, enough of talking, let's get straight into these two examples. So the first one that I want to show you is once again under the injection, and then let's go HTML via DOM injection. And let's select HTML5 storage. Here we do have some web storage, and if we type something in these user input fields and click on add, it will get reflected on this table that we can see on this page. Now, there are a few things that we might notice right here. There are a couple of things reflecting. We have our test getting reflected here and here. We also get test getting reflected here. But we also get our user agent field getting reflected here. Now, we will not be injecting this because we already saw an example of injecting the user agent field. It would probably work and we could probably reflect our HTML code right here. But let's give it a try under these two tabs. So the first thing that we will notice is that if we turn on the intercept and we type something in, well, we didn't really intercept anything. Our request didn't get interrupted. We simply just added another test value on this storage. But even though we can't really intercept this request, we can still try to write HTML code. And let's copy this right here and paste it on the second input tab as well. And we do get HTML injection, we just don't get it here. We get it right here. As we can see, our input got filtered and it simply just added our HTML code as a regular string, but here where it also reflects, we got test written in header size 1 tags. Okay, so this was a simple example. We got our HTML code right here, so we know that it's vulnerable to the HTML injection. But let's take a look at more advanced example. To navigate to that more advanced example, even that one is rather easy. We can go to the injection and let's go, for example, to the first one and let's go to this one, those back buttons. Click on that. Oops, we still have intercept on. Let's turn it off. And this is the page that we get. Once again, no user input fields. So what are we going to inject? We can't even see in this text that anything from our headers gets reflected. Well, besides this one, which is standard thing on every page that we visit, we're just going to ignore it at the moment. But if we read this discussion right here, it says the large back button image appears automatically on most pages, and they're probably referring to this arrow and this back button right here. If the image is clicked, the user is redirected to the previous page. The button works by executing a JavaScript statement which sets document.location.href equal to the HTTP header refer. This might already give us enough information. If we give it a try, for example, let's turn on the intercept and we click this back button. If we find the refer header, which is right here, well, it is correct. We do get the link to the page that we want to visit, which is the previous page to this one. Since we clicked the back button, it will redirect us to the previous page, and the link to that previous page is in the refer of our HTTP headers. But how does that help us? It doesn't get reflected anywhere on the page. At least this link doesn't get reflected anywhere on the page. Or does it? Well, let's take a look. Let's go right here and let's go under the inspect element. And for the inspect element to work better, let us just turn off the intercept and go back to our those back buttons example. So here it is. Let's go on it and let's try to find the code of this back button. So usually just by going over these lines of code, you will be able to select the different parts of pages. So let's just select this one since it's the entire page. Let's go to this one as it also takes our back button inside. And let's go to this one next and this one. Here we should be able to find the div open tag, which covers our button, which in our case is this one right here. And here's the button. If we click on lower arrow, we're going to get this OpenA tags that says onClick document.location.href, and here is where our referral link gets reflected. It is right here in our HTML code. We can see it inside the A tags. But how can we inject right here? Well, we could try to inject a simple HTML code in the refer button, but you will notice that it won't work if I type h1 and then test and then close h1 tags and forward the packet. Then turn off the intercept and navigate back to the page. Well, we didn't really get our HTML code reflected anywhere. So could it be that it's not vulnerable? Well, let's give it a closer look to our code. So here is our button where we now injected the HTML code instead of the refer link, which will lead us to the previous page. And it looks like this. So we have open A tags, onClick, document.location.href, and under the open single quotes, this is equal to our HTML code, as we can see right here. So let's copy this line of code. I'm not sure what I copied, but we're going to give it a try. Let's go nano HTML code.txt just so we can write our HTML payload right here. And for some reason I copied this, but nonetheless I'm just going to type it in so we can see it better. Okay, I wrote the entire code right here. So this is how it looks like. But we can see that this HTML code that we injected belongs to this document.location.href. So in order for our HTML code to get processed as an HTML code, we must escape these A tags and this document.location somehow. Well, here's what we can do. Let's try to write our payload down here. So it will start with onClick. Oops, and I misspelled right here. So onClick document.location.href equals open single quote. And the first thing to notice is that this document starts with double quotes. So perhaps what we can do is we can make it end right here by adding the closing double quotes instead of just starting to write our HTML code right here. So now perhaps if we write our HTML code, it would look something like this, right? So our document.location should end right here, but we still got our HTML code between the A tags. So what we can do is we can also close the A tags right here. After the double quote that we injected, we can type closing tags that we have right here and closing A tags. Now, you might notice some similarities because we pretty much just moved this entire part of characters right before our HTML code. As you can see right here, here was it before, and now we have it here. So we're essentially making this open A tags with the document location end sooner. And as soon as it ends with this line, we are moving on to our next line of HTML code that we are injecting. So our final payload will look something like this. We want to inject this into the page. Open h1 tags. This is our payload. Let's see if it works. So if we copy it, go back to the page, turn on the intercept, we can lower this, refresh the page, and under the refer, we don't really need to remove this link, we can just append our payload straight at the end of the link. So let's go paste, and here it is. We got double quotes, close tags, close A tags, open header1 tags, we wrote test, and we closed header1 tags. Let's forward this packet and turn off the intercept, and we go back. Here is our HTML code getting reflected on the page. We successfully performed HTML injection that we couldn't get to work at the beginning. And this right here is the leftover code that we pretty much cut off once we injected our HTML code. And in order for us to take a look at how this code looks in the HTML page, we can navigate to our button, which is right here, and here is the open A tags that we have before. We closed it right here. As we can see, this is the first part of our code where we closed the double quotes and we closed the A tags. And down here, it processed our H1 headers with test written inside of it. So it processed it as HTML. And here is that leftover part that we cut off from this line right here. So once again, in case you're confused, what we did is we took the original code, which looked like this once we inject our H1 headers. We moved the closing tags before we type in our HTML code. Then it closed this entire line of A tags, and it processed our HTML code as a separate line, and it wrote it on the page right here. So this was a little bit more advanced example of HTML injection, and with this, we are done with this vulnerability. So it was rather easy to perform, as we already mentioned, but it does not have that big of an impact. The best thing that you can do with this is pretty much change stuff on the page or redirect the page. Nonetheless, if you want, you can take a look at the other examples of HTML injection on this and on other pages of our vulnerable virtual machine. You can see there are too many. Of course, we're not going to cover all of them, so you can practice this vulnerability on different examples. And we are going to continue with the next vulnerability in the next section, which is going to be a more serious and a more dangerous one, and it is called command injection. See you in the next lecture.